Hey guys, Dave Hewitt here on the Harris Football Channel with Chris Harris. We're talking about your overall draft strategy, how to manage those early rounds. And within the Player Profile Almanac, there's a research project talking about like how wide receivers did last year, those top 10 wide receivers. And Chris, rather than me going on about it, talk to me about what your findings were when you looked into it.
Sure. I mean, it didn't take much looking into. I think everybody knows. Last year, this is, if you have the Almanac, it's the Odell Beckham profile. There's like a research project at the back of the Odell Beckham profile. And he's sort of the poster child for what this wound up looking like because he was such a disaster for some people taking him late first round, a lot of people taking him early second round, and emblematic of what wound up feeling like a huge pattern, Dave. Like it, I'm going to guess there were some teams of yours last year where you said, I don't know about these running backs. RB 8 and 9 feel pretty shaky to me. I'm just going to put easy money in the bank and take Devontae Adams. I'm going to take easy money in the bank and take Odell Beckham and Tyreek Hill and Adam Thielen. And these guys wound up getting hurt or Antonio Brown wound up being ineffective. You had teams like...
Yeah, and even more so, like as the year went on, like you talked about the infinite sadness and stuff of like I couldn't let go of like my top guys. I had to have them, but they weren't performing, and I couldn't cut them, so it felt kind of in a pinch. So it was like my lotto ticket running backs had to leave for other wide receivers because I just didn't know how to field a team.
100%. Yeah, I mean I think. So that's that feeling that you're describing is kind of what I thought we would talk about in this show, which is. I'm not that interested in zero RB. I never have been. But you said this before we started recording. Like 2019 was the ultimate disparagement of zero RB because if you went wide receiver, you might have taken, I don't know, Devontae Adams and Antonio Brown, and you're nowhere, right? So the question that I think we want to dive into here is something that's probably not actually answerable, but at least it gets us thinking, which is this the way of the future? Is this the way it's always going to be? Is there something about the NFL right now at circa 2019 that hadn't existed before that is somehow going to make these top wide receivers be so much more untrustable to the point where we should just be staying away from them? I think in the end, after we finish this conversation, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm going to convince you one way or the other. I think I'm going to wind up thinking 2019 was something of an anomaly.
So you're not going to come out here and say that it's like because everything's 3, 4, 5 wide receiver sets if we're talking Arizona or something that it's all just doomed. That's not what you think it is.
Well, I mean, dude, you listen to the podcast, that's exactly what I wound up saying, all through last year because you're thinking about this stuff every day, and every week there are games in which the dude who was wide receiver 2 last week is now wide receiver 50 this week, and it just doesn't feel like they're used any differently, and it feels like a seesaw, and it feels random, and I don't know that it won't always be that way. My suspicion maybe is that it won't be.
We'll get into this more, but first let's take a break to talk about our sponsor, Felix Gray, and their great glasses.
Indeed, we're both wearing the Felix Gray glasses. I'm looking at a computer and wearing my Felix Gray glasses. Good product placement, but these are my computer glasses. I wear them every single time I'm writing or really recording the podcast. When I'm writing the YouTube show, you name it, I've got the Felix Grays on, and the idea is that they filter out blue light. So I can tell you, I was on the computer all the time, probably about a year and a half ago, getting sort of end of day headaches and not understanding why. And Felix Gray happened to become a sponsor. And I know Ryan from Felix Gray because he used to be at another sponsor that sponsors the podcast. And he said, you want to try these? See if you like them for the advertising. And I was like, sure, I'll try them. And I have to say they work. They filter out blue light, and digital eye strain has become a thing. I think people know what it is. Hewitt, you mentioned that you needed them in prescription. I needed them in prescription too. You can get them in non-prescription as well. They absolutely work.
Yeah, they're great. And I mean, with all of the bad things of 2020 should also be Felix Gray. All those meetings people used to have in person, they're now like online. And my wife quickly needed like, hey, can I borrow your glasses? Oh, these really work. We need to get me another pair of these glasses. So it made an impact on my whole household.
True. So we love Felix Gray. It's felixgrayglasses.com/HarrisTube is the URL if you want to go check them out. Totally reasonable. Total satisfaction guaranteed if they're not clearing up digital live stream. They'll refund you. It's free shipping, free returns. So yeah, Felix Gray, great sponsor. They sponsor the podcast as well.
All right, getting back into the topic, we're talking about overall draft strategy and why wide receivers broke our heart last year and will forever break our heart. Nothing will ever change, right? That's what we're talking about?
I don't, the answer is going to wind up being I don't know. I'll go through the specifics of the heartbreak. Okay, so I'm actually turning to the research project in the Almanac in order to read it. And I'm looking at the top 10 in ADP among the wide receivers last year. Okay, I'm just going to literally go through, and you guys will see on the screen how they finished. DeAndre Hopkins was the number 1. He finished 10th. Devontae Adams was the number 2. He finished 29th because he got hurt. Julio Jones, you see, he finished 5th. Tyreek Hill got hurt. He finished 28th. Michael Thomas was the discovery. He had 40-something more catches than every other receiver in the league. Odell Beckham, whose profile this is, finishes 31st. Juju gets hurt and doesn't have Roethlisberger. Mike Evans was good, but Antonio Brown obviously turned bad, and Adam Thielen also gets hurt as well. So the question is, does this wind up looking the same going forward? It's a lot of injuries. It's a lot of inconsistency because people returning from injuries and us not knowing whether we can use them or not. I can't predict injuries, but this feels a lot like the year 2015 when everybody decided running backs were untrustworthy. And actually, famously, ESPN had Antonio Brown as their number 1 overall player that year. And that was the year a lot of running backs went crazy. Like, I just don't want to, Dave, overreact to one season where most of this top level carnage, some of it was Odell Beckham maybe being hurt but not being good, Antonio Brown not existing in the NFL, but a lot of it was injury, and it feels like that level of confluence of injury might not happen again.
Yeah, I kind of think about it a different way too. Like something you'd sent was the list to me of here's what the top 10 ended up being. Right. And we've got these names that we wouldn't expect there. And you've said it on the podcast of wide receivers incredibly flat. I'm trying to do this ranks and it's not as linear as these ranks look. But I think myself included, like we do list videos and stuff and you see top 10 and you don't really, I don't think about it, at least. I shouldn't assume everyone. But I don't think about like, well, if this guy was in the top 10, what was really the point difference to like being 27 or something like that? Like there's this huge disparity. This guy finished 29th, but like they were still good players. They just didn't do it for fantasy for us, which is what we're looking at.
Well, so I assume right now we're looking at the list of the actual top 10 finishers, and you see the 2 total outliers are Devontae Parker at 6 and AJ Brown at 9, and that gives you the feeling of like, well, it's all just random. You couldn't have predicted it beforehand, so it's all just random. The fact is, though, if Odell Beckham doesn't get hurt, if Tyreek Hill doesn't get hurt, if Antonio Brown plays, Devontae Parker doesn't finish in the top 10 and A.J. Brown's number 17 and nobody's losing their minds, right? I think in the end, the why I thought this would be a good topic is because I kind of just want to reset. 1 year is a long time in our lives, in a calendar of our lives. And it feels like a really long time for the purposes of fantasy. To now we have a trend. It feels like so long ago that these top receivers were reliable. Probably that's just a blip. Probably it's just a weird, bad coincidence that a bunch of guys who we thought safe money in the bank wound up not being safe money in the bank. I think the reason we're calling this a video, like why wide receivers could save your life or whatever in 2020, why they could, kind of be the key to winning is that if everybody's going to zig toward running backs, say late first, early second, late second, early third, there actually might be value in these top 10, 12, 14, or whatever receivers, as weird and same seeming as they get when you get toward 10, 12, 14. Maybe they're going to wind up being safe the way they've always been in the last 20 years or so. Until last year, they've been safer. Yeah.
And honestly, isn't some of this the difference of how they've been so safe and now like they still had our top 10 still had like a 40% hit rate, which
it's awful.
It's awful, but it's not like running back was always incredible with your top picks.
Oh, usually it's this 100% because that's where 0RB comes from.
Right.
That's the whole point, is that if you looked at that percent that you just quoted, sure, last year it was safer to have a running back, but the reason 0RB exists, which I'm not necessarily endorsing, is 100% what you say. Usually it's running back that's scarier.
Yeah, so they're not any like I wanted to point out that it doesn't make wide receivers worse than anything else you're doing. It's not like, oh, it's safer for me to jump in this other pool because wide receiver is so bad. Even if they're slightly closer, they're still, they're hitting more unless you're like, well, top quarterbacks always come through, but you're not taking them that early. And if you are, you're not competing. So
Yeah, I mean, 2019 hopefully will wind up having been the outlier. I just did an industry draft on this past Friday, and took Julio Jones at number 11. So that's the kind of thing I didn't feel like I needed to reach for the running back. I felt like I could still consider Julio or Tyreek Hill or whomever, Devontae Adams, as worthy of that early round pick, and kind of trusting that 2019 was an anomaly.
All right, I'm on board. You got me. You did it. You convinced me. Well, thanks, Chris, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks so much for watching. Please, please, please smash that like button, write a comment, tell us who else you'd like to see us review film on, and of course, best of all, please subscribe to our channel and then click that little bell above the subscribe button, and you'll be notified whenever we post a new video.